Hello, greeting of the day. Let me just do a small test before we go live. If I'm able to hear myself and see myself, just hold on for a few more seconds. If I can find settings. Yeah, so we are live now. So in this stream, what we are going to do is learn about different countries and we'll pick a country and learn about it for 7 days, starting with the history, because uh, to build a foundational knowledge of any country, you need to know how uh, its history has impacted its geopolitical scenario, how geographically it has been structured, what kind of kingdoms it has been ruled throughout the year. It will give us information about different languages that have been spoken in that area and the influence from the neighboring regions as well. Uh, I'm doing this mostly to learn about the countries and also it will give me more impetus to learn about different countries if I do it. For example, for a week, uh, I will learn what geography, music, culture, the kind of music, uh, maybe movies and TV series, just to increase the general overall knowledge. So, without any ado, let's start with the history of the Vietnam. I found some videos. If you can suggest me a few more to learn more about the history of Vietnam, please do so. Just before starting, I want to discuss that I understand that the country has been in a turmoil for past many years. There has been a few instances where army has taken over. So I do not want to go much more into the politics because it is different from the point of perspective of different people. Also, because I have very little knowledge about the subject matter, I do not want to engage in this too deeply. Although I would like to get an overview and have a understanding of what's going on the ground. So let's start with the history of Vietnam, explained in 8 minutes.
Stretching along the coast of Southeast Asia, with dense
Yeah, before we further move in this video, shout out to Epimetheus. We are using his video as a reference point. Also, uh, all all the creators who have created these videos, I would like to thank. And if you can subscribe in your free time, it is free to do so. And let's get on with it.
mountains and jungles to the west, the Socialist Republic of Vietnam is home to approximately 100 million people. Vietnam's history has been shaped through its geography, maritime trade, as well as this tumultuous relationship with its neighbor China to the north. Since prehistoric times, Vietnam's Red River Delta has been a population center due to its fertile soil and defensible location. Feudal communities of rice growers began to develop in this region and eventually confederated to form the Kingdom of Van Lang, which corresponds to the Bronze Age Dong Sun material culture. Along the southern coast, the separate Sa Huin
Yeah, it's amazing how old in civilization these cultures go, and we do not know uh, much about these. Um, Although in the West it is not taught as much, but uh, I believe whatever it is, like too much prehistoric and has influenced the area. Basic understanding should be there. Vietnam is probably famous or infamous for the war against the US, uh, and probably that's not the right lens to see a country from. There has been a lot of contribution, I believe, from the Vietnam that not everyone knows of, and obviously we are open to learn more about these things.
seafaring culture developed strong ties with the western central Philippine archipelago. The Lac Viet people of Van Lang united with the Yu people of Nam Kum to form O Lac in 257 BC. The ancient Yu people are the ancestors of the modern Thai speaking peoples of northern Vietnam, such as the
Also, I would believe that there has been a lot of cultural exchanges between neighboring countries, for example, China and Vietnam, especially in the region of Aulak, if I'm not wrong. Correct me if I am.
Noom. Short hair, tattoos, and the practice of teeth blackening were all cultural aspects originating with the Yu. Ulak
Yeah, it's quite fascinating, the black teeth.
had a significant uniting influence. However, it only lasted the one long reign of its founding monarch. In response to the first Chinese emperor, Qin Shi Huang, and his successors' expansion southwards, the many Yu tribes in the region united and formed a powerful kingdom of Nan Yu, which became wealthy through the exportation of ivory, pearls, and precious woods from the jungles of Vietnam. As China reunited under the Han Dynasty,
Quite fascinating structure, quite similar to the mummies that were found. Not quite similar, but obviously it is sleeping and in the similar shape. None new.
they began to extract tribute from Nan Yu. Eventually, this was not enough to satisfy the Han Emperor. Nan Yu was invaded and incorporated into the Han Empire. Han Chinese rule was marked with failed attempts to assimilate the Viet populace into the larger homogenized Chinese culture, particularly with common women who enjoyed far greater autonomy and cultural status than their Chinese counterparts at the time. In 40 AD, two Viet daughters of a
Also, there has been much more independence and say from the female perspective also compared to China, because I believe China was much more patriarchal society, if I'm not wrong.
military prefect rebelled after one of their husbands was executed by the Han. The Trung sisters ambushed the small local garrison of their village and began taking other cities and towns. The Chinese did not initially take the rebellion seriously and responded incompetently, and were defeated time and again by the sisters, who had raised an army of 80,000, including a sizable number of women.
So these women raised an army of 80,000 people and you're not taking them seriously.
And villagers whom they had trained. The young Trung sisters, still in their 20s, established local rule and were both crowned as queen and viceroy. Their
Drunk,
reign would be short, as a Han veteran general with
drunk sisters.
the overwhelming force was dispatched. Depending on the source, the Trung sisters were either executed, died in battle, or committed suicide to avoid capture. According to Chinese sources, their decapitated heads were sent back to the Han capital as a trophy. During the second Chinese domination of Vietnam, the rebellions would continue whenever there was internal instability in the empire. To the south, the venerable kingdom of Champa formed from an amalgamation of Sahuin culture and various other seafaring peoples in the region. They were greatly influenced by the Indianized Funan Empire to their south, and widely adopted Hinduism and Buddhism. In 544, after two
Yes, that's what I thought. Like Kingdom of Champa sounds quite Indianized, and as the narrator said that influenced by Hinduism, I can relate some of these words.
centuries of failed rebellions, the Vatsuan kingdom was established by a local magistrate of non-Yu descent who granted himself the title Southern Emperor. It would take nearly another 60 years till a large enough invasion could be organized to retake Nam Viet. Over the next 300 years, there were 8 major rebellions. Eventually, the Tang dynasty granted the Vietnamese the status of an autonomous vassal, as long as they would make regular tribute payments. Shortly after the Tang collapse, the Viet were able to gain full independence from the Southern Han. Over the next 60 years, a period where 12 warlords ruled over a divided country, and 3 short-lived dynasties ensued. Despite the disunity of this period, a major Song Chinese invasion was repulsed in 981.
This is the thing with the older kingdoms. There has been so many dynasties that it's so hard to remember all of these. But um, I'll try to remember a few of them: Drunk Sisters, Kingdom of Champa, Jin Hai Quan. Apologies for the wrong pronunciation. But it's fascinating to know that over the years, almost all the countries have long lived dynasties that have been overthrown with the help of rebellions and coups. And there has been so much influence from the neighboring countries, not only from the land but the maritime also, as we've seen. The kingdom of Champa was influenced by Hinduism, probably from um, Indian merchants that were trading through the sea route with Vietnam.
One. Stability was eventually brought about by the Li dynasty, who instituted equal rule of law rather than the whims of an autocrat. The stable 216-year reign of this dynasty ended in a palace coup. The 6-year-old empress was overthrown, and her 7-year-old husband of the Tran clan was made emperor in a relatively peaceful transition. The Tran dynasty is most renowned for repulsing not one, two, but three Mongol invasions of Vietnam, most famously in 1280.
Well, as we know, Mongols were quite fearsome, so preventing three attacks from the north, from Mongolian attacks, is quite astonishing, to say the least.
When a massive Mongol fleet was utterly eviscerated. War between the Dai Viet and Champa broke out after the Viet emperor's sister was married to the Cham king, who died a year later. According to Cham tradition, she was to be cremated with him at his funeral, where she was rescued by Viet funeral guests, sparking all out war and the Viet conquest of Champa.
So this is quite similar to the Sati Pratha. The narrator would discuss that the girl had to be born with the husband, but it used to happen only in certain parts of India. It's uh, astonishing to know that these cultural and traditional information uh, were exchanged to other parts of the world also, and they were following the same. In India, there were a lot of kingdoms that followed this. A particular caste only followed this. Not everyone followed this, and there was a huge movement by Raja Ram Mohan Roy in 19th century, if I'm not wrong, uh, and it basically helped India to get rid of these traditions or evil traditions, we can say.
The occupation was short lived, and the Tran dynasty fell into internal infighting with some of the family allying with the Cham. This began another chaotic period with multiple short lived dynasties and a brief Chinese Ming dynasty domination of Vietnam. This period was followed by the longest lasting Viet dynasty, the later Li, which firmly incorporated Champa as a vassal state. However, as time went on, the Champa, Ming Bac Mac in the north, Trin, and Nguyen lords all acted as independent states with their separate capitals and
Mac, Trin, and Neun. Okay.
armies, with the Li dynasty emperor eventually only acting as a ceremonial leader. The Trin and Nguyen lords fought in several wars attempting to unite the country. Firearms were rapidly adopted by both armies during these wars, supplied by French, Dutch, and Portuguese merchants. The lavish lifestyles of the nobility and the toils of war on the majority of the population led to a mass peasant revolt led by the Tai Sun brothers, who briefly ruled the country. Through a turbulent period where another
Tyson brothers remind me of obviously Mike Tyson. But yes, this period between 1500 and somewhere around 1750 were the period where English, French, Danish, Portuguese, everyone was coming to South and Southeastern India, towards Sena countries as well, and they were trying to influence these countries to trade with them only so they can have hegemony over the trade and sell these products at much more expensive prices in Europe. Initially, they were focused only on uh, trading, but eventually they learned that it's much better to have a say in the ruling. And if you become a ruler or have a say in who is ruling the state, you can have control over the business as well. Something that we see in the today's day and age as well in different countries.
Chinese invasion was fought off seeking to reinstate the Li emperor. The unstable rule of the Tai Sun was overthrown by the resurgent Nguyen, who consolidated the country and expanded its territory in alliance with Siam and France, who supplied them weapons in exchange for a trade monopoly. Over time, the relationship became
Yeah, as I mentioned, mostly trade monopoly. So these French, English, and Portuguese they used to give a lot of weaponry, military support in return of trade, uh, monopoly or benefits in the trade. Most of the times, uh, they focused on one particular area, but there has been occasions where English took one side and French took one side of the kingdom in the same country, and they made these ruler fight with each other.
strained as Vietnamese emperors sought to reduce growing French influence. After jailing Catholic missionaries entering the country illegally, French Emperor Napoleon III invaded, using this as pretext, taking land in the south and negotiating a favorable treaty. 2 decades later, the French would conquer the rest of Vietnam and continue to take territory from the Siamese Empire. During World War II, the Empire of Japan would occupy French Indochina, ruling through a puppet emperor as the French had done. The Japanese occupation was countered by the Viet Minh, communist rebels whom were led by Ho Chi Minh.
French Indochina is such a wild term. It's like saying a French guy, an Indian, and a Chinese went into a war. How this makes sense, I do not know, but it is.
After the war, he declared independence for the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. The monarchy was disestablished, and a 7 year long war with the French began. The Soviet Union and
Okay,
Communist China
what
supported the
was
Viet,
his name?
countered by the Viet Minh, communist rebels whom were led by Ho Chi Minh.
Ho Chi
After the
Minh.
war,
Yeah.
he declared independence for the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. The monarchy was disestablished, and a 7 year long war with the French began. The Soviet Union and Communist China supported the Viet Minh, while the United Kingdom and United States supported France. After the war ended, the Geneva Accord partitioned French Indochina. The United States supported France.
I want to know what's going on here. Why they were fighting? I understand that there was influence of communism in this particular region, but you do not want to involve yourself in full-fledged war, considering they do not have any precious materials, or as I do not have any knowledge of. They do not have huge resources of oil and gas, at least not known to the people at that particular time. So basically, it was like stopping communism in one country. If there are more reasons that I'm not aware of, please let me know. That's why we are here to learn about these things in much more depth. But this is a quite weird combination of countries to fight with each other.
After the war ended, the Geneva Accord partitioned French Indochina into Communist Democratic Republic of Vietnam, the State of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Vietnamese Catholics moved south, while Viet Minh moved north. The following year, a referendum was held.
This is quite similar to the partition of India, where populations have to move through a border, and that eventually results in huge massacres and fight with each other. And this dividing a country into two has not worked in the past and probably not work in the future. We are seeing this with South and North Korea, with India and Pakistan, and uh, there has been many examples of this.
Which overwhelmingly decided that the South would not be reunited with the North. Communists in the South alleged mass vote rigging and formed the Viet Cong. Backed by China, the North began aiding the Viet Cong. While fearing communist expansion throughout the region, the US began aiding the South, beginning the Second Indochina War, or simply the Vietnam War. This aid was slowly increased to air support, and in 1965, 3,500 US Marines were deployed.
Yes, I've seen a lot of horrendous videos what went on in the Vietnam War, and the visual itself are truly terrifying. If you see and do a little bit research, you'll get to know that things were done uh, in the Vietnam War that were truly terrifying and inhumane. There were videos on the internet where even small kids of age 8 to 10 years have been coming out of their villages burned uh, due to the airstrikes, and uh, probably not the right approach for any war, but truly inhumane, uh, to say the least. But then it said every war has some dark side to it, and I believe there was one photographer who captured a lot of this, and he was awarded uh, with some award. I can't remember his name.
By the end of that year, more than 200,000 US military personnel had been deployed to South Vietnam. The war would be a long and brutal affair. In 1970, North Vietnam invaded Cambodia in support of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. The United States and South Vietnam invaded as well in retaliation. After this escalation, anti war sentiment began to steadily grow in the United States. By 1973, President Nixon, who was embroiled in the midst of the Watergate scandal, ceased all bombing of the North and subsequently pulled all troops out of Vietnam. The North then began to rapidly advance towards Saigon as refugees poured south, fearing the communist regime's vengeance. In April 1975, Saigon fell, and the war was effectively over, establishing the Socialist Republic of Vietnam the following year. This has been a
So this is quite similar of the Berlin Wall fall, so fall of the Saigon. It has a greater meaning, I believe, in the history of Vietnam.
Prometheus, and I hope you really enjoyed that lightning fast version of Vietnamese history. Let me know in the comments what country's history would you like to see me cover in this fashion in the future. If you're feeling generous, you can help me create more videos like this over on Patreon, starting at just $1 a month. Link in the description. I'm just one man, and it takes me many hours of researching, drawing, narrating, and editing to bring
Yes, please support Epimetheus 1776 if you can. Do subscribe to his channel. He is close to reaching 700k subscribers. So let's promote knowledgeable content on YouTube. And about the video, I did learn few things. Especially, I was really fascinating to learn about the trunk systems. The story was quite fascinating how they inspired 80,000, if I'm not wrong, soldiers to march against their opponents, and again the influence of India in the Kingdom of Champa, and obviously the Vietnam War that we already know some history of some information, because that is the only thing they teach in the West about Vietnam. But continually, we are learning more about Vietnam for next 7 days, and each day we'll learn a few more things, maybe music, geography, current geopolitical scenarios, what's going on in the country, and much more. So, if you're from Vietnam, let me know if this guy missed anything, and if there is more uh, important facts or funny facts about Vietnam, especially about trunk sister. If you can let me know a few more things, that will be great. Um, so yeah, stopping this live stream right now. It's been over 25 minutes, and thank you if you have been watching for this long. Uh, take care. Till next time. Goodbye.